Hello y'all. Wow, tragic. There are two important things that we need to discuss today. First of all, I'm wearing galaxy pants. And second of all, hashtag own voices books. I know that I've been missing from YouTube for quite some time, but that's because I've been spending a lot of time on Twitter. I think a lot of times I forget that Twitter is not synonymous with my YouTube. I have a separate audience there, and I have like a fraction of the audience on Twitter. I almost said Tinder. Twitter that I have on YouTube. And a lot of times I would always assume that the discourse and the tweets and the threads that I see on Twitter are things that are relevant on YouTube as well. But stepping back and looking at it, knowing that I talk so much about diversity on Twitter and hashtag own voices and tweeting a lot of threads and getting more people involved on there, I realize none of that translates over to the platform where I have the most following. So therefore, maybe not a lot of people watching this video know what own voices is. And this video is the end of my silence about diversity. I think first and foremost, my silence previous to today warrants an apology from me. Once more, I focused a lot more on talking about diversity on my Twitter and my Tumblr. So finally on my YouTube, we're gonna start seeing an equitable amount of discussing diversity and discussing problematic books. So hopefully the place where I have the most viewers, this message can reach the most people. With that intro being finally over, I do want to go ahead and jump into the topic that I'm going to be discussing with you today, which is hashtag own voices. This is something that's become very important in the book community, and it involves books that would be categorized as diverse. So own voices, and why does it matter? I know I just went into a huge intro, but I want to do a small disclaimer. I'm white. That is very apparent. Things that also might be apparent to you if you've watched my channel for a while. I'm white, but I'm also cisgender, heterosexual, and able-bodied. With every book I've read, and every TV show I've watched, and any other media consumed, I've been able to locate a person, or maybe an entire cast of people that represent me. No matter what book I read, there's always going to be a white person, there's always going to be a straight person, there's always going to be a person that I can see myself in, just because in media and literature, this white, cisgendered, heterosexual person is the norm. Me being able to recognize diversity is saying there needs to be more representation of people that other genders and other races and other ethnicities and other types of body ability and other types of sexuality can identify with. And we've crossed that breach. Now we're fortunate to have books in media that do have main characters that aren't cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied. We have a bigger, diverse group of media to choose from, which is awesome. But think of all the books that you have read that feature a gay main character or a main character who's a person of color. Now from that list, identify the authors of those books. It's likely that a big chunk of those books were written by authors that are white, straight, heterosexual, cisgendered people. So finally arriving to my point, own voices is a hashtag that started on Twitter, but it's also sort of a movement in the book community to make sure that books about marginalized people are encouraged to be read from authors who are marginalized as well. So instead of reading a book about a marginalized main character from a non-marginalized author, you would encourage people to pick up a book that rather features a marginalized character that was written by an author from that same demographic. So now that we know what own voices is, let's talk about why it's important. First of all, accuracy. Clearly, if I'm a white person and I write a book about a gay black male, I'm not a gay black male. There's no way for me to step into the shoes of that person, no matter how much research I do. No matter if all of my friends are gay black males, there's no way that I can make a 100% authentic book about what it is to be that person. If perchance I decide to write this book without doing research, that would mean I'm writing a book about someone who is the opposite of me, just going off of assumptions and stereotypes, which for people of color reading the book reads as extremely offensive, and it just perpetuates stereotypes that people have been trying to dismantle. By supporting a marginalized author who's writing in authentic stories that may be based on truth or based on their experiences, you're dedicating your money to a person who has undergone that process and undergone that oppression, and thus the book is going to be a more truthful product of their life experiences. I know that as a white person, I've never been discriminated against. As a straight person, I've never been shamed for being homosexual or somewhere on the LGBTQIA spectrum. I don't want to write a book with the intention of, let me make a statement about race, and have that be something that's a bestseller, whereas someone who is from that ethnicity could write the same book and it would be so much more authentic coming from their heart. This being said, it's not possible to buy own voices books 100% of the time. Although it's very encouraged that you look at the people who you're buying books from, you look at the authors and you see, are these novels being pulled from experience and from authenticity, or are they just something that a white person has made up in their head, going off of stereotypes and assumptions? There are definitely genres and places in the industry where we are lacking in this. One huge example that I noticed on Twitter the other day when I asked about it was there are hardly any books about disabilities that are written from own voices. This could be a product of not that many disabled people have actually written many books about it, but more often than not, disability is used as a plot device in a lot of novels, and it's written by an able-bodied person about this disabled person, and it's often romanticized or in some other way flipped around to make a great plot twist. If you see where I'm coming from, you could also see how that affects the community of disabled people who have to see this rhetoric in media and they see the stereotypes about them, and it's just hurtful. Now, I feel like for this video, I've sort of been kind of saying, if you're a white person, don't write about black people. Like, that's not what you should draw from this. It's not write what you're comfortable with. It's not supposed to be counterintuitive against diversity. If you write books with diverse casts, that is 100% splendid, wonderful, fantastic. I encourage you to publish it. But marginalized people have undergone marginalization for centuries. Buying a book from a marginalized author or putting your money where you would like to see more books that are diverse, it shows publishers where to invest. I could link you to a million articles and a million tweets and a million people who have talked about what it's like to be a person of color or a marginalized person going through the publishing process and how that differs from maybe a white man might go through the publishing process. But giving extra support to people who have gone through the experiences that they write about, and especially people who in the past or even now might be barred from the publishing industry, or they're lured away from publishing, or they're advised to write things differently just because they think that they won't sell to a white demographic, that's wrong. And so as a reading community, we need to be able to throw support behind the people that deserve it. I feel like there needs to be so much more discussion about own voices on BookTube, and I encourage everyone to go out, do some research on it. It's incredibly easy to look at a book and go, okay, this has a gay main character. Is this own voices or is it not? The internet exists. You can Google it. You can go to their Twitter page. 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to find within the first 2 minutes if a book is own voices or not. And even if you can't find if it's own voices, there are lists upon lists out there of books that are own voices for you to support authors that have been marginalized and have struggled. And their book is a product that is authentic and heartfelt. And in the midst of all of it, you get to read a book that is more diverse. You get to expand your knowledge of the world. You get to experience perspectives that you might not even have considered before. And when you're reading own voices, you can be so much more sure that you're not reading that from the perspective of someone who doesn't understand, who has faulty information, or perhaps is even adding to the stereotypes of that demographic. All in all, if you decide to read own voices books, you are going to be investing your money into something that will be a far more accurate and possibly even more enjoyable read. And alongside that, publishers are going to notice where readers are putting their money, and seeing that people are interested in reading these authentic stories from marginalized authors will convince them that it's not a scary thing to have own voices books out there, that it's not something that's going to detract readers away. It's going to invite readers in. So with all this being said, I hope that you all understood. I hope that you understand the importance of own voices books. I will link down below as many resources as I can, including Twitter threads, recommendation lists, people to follow, just anything that I think would be helpful for you to figure out more about own voices and also to incorporate that more into your reading. I think that would be excellent. Hey there. So it's been like 2 hours since I filmed this video, and I haven't moved from this chair. Not the point. Anyway, I feel like I needed to add a little bit of a clarification, I suppose. Speaking in this video, I began to refute a little bit how I didn't think I was coming across quite eloquently enough. I feel like some people's natural response might be, oh, well, you're telling us that we can never read a book written by a white person ever because it would be problematic, which is untrue. I mean, clearly anyone can follow their dreams. Anyone can become an author. Anyone has the right to publish a story. But you as a reader have the choice to support the people that deserve the support and will write a more authentic tale than someone who might be on the New York Times bestseller list for the 50th year in a row. Writing the same washed up stories about the same bland characters that they can't relate to. And this is where the importance of research comes back. If you read a book that's written by a white person or someone who is unmarginalized, it's crucial to seek reviews that are from marginalized people that analyze if the story is problematic or not. If you're a non-marginalized person reading a book by a non-marginalized person, it's going to be a lot harder for you to pick up on things that might be important or might be overlooked that are problematic. So seeking reviews from people who are able to detect those things because of a lifelong of oppression and being marginalized is incredibly important. Once again, I'll make a separate video talking about bloggers and YouTubers and all of that are diverse to help you diversify the people that you watch and the people you seek reviews from, just to make sure you're getting a well-rounded understanding of the books that you're reading and you're interpreting which books to read and which ones are problematic. Okay, I think I've cleared that up a little bit more. Back to the video. However, for the last of this video, I wanted to do something. Like I said at the very beginning of this video, I'm a white person, so I've never read a book and felt, I wish that there was someone like me. I wish that I could relate to this. I've never read a book and felt like this is an inaccurate representation of my ethnicity or my sexuality, because I have read books by people of my gender and sexuality and race my entire life. So right here I wanted to include some testimonials from people who have been affected by the Own Voices movement. Hopefully they can shed some light on these situations and you can get a more opinionated and more heartfelt tale of these people that have had to struggle to find representation. So therefore I'm gonna cut to those people. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for watching and let's go.
Hey, I'm V from Own V Reads. I want to share my Own Voices story with you guys. My experience with Own Voices didn't start until I was about 15 years old. I want to say I was probably younger. Maybe I was in middle school. The reason it's important to me is because I never really got to see myself in literature portrayed the correct way. A lot of times when I read a book that featured a girl who looked like me, curly hair, black skin, brown skin, short, girly sometimes, always portrayed negatively. Basically every time I see myself in a book, my character looks like me, ends up getting killed off, is a very unimportant side character who ends up being villainized, or someone who's kind of just there to make the white cis het protagonist look better. Always portrayed as the girl who's slutty, who's sultry, who's just over-sexualized or victimized in some way. It doesn't make me feel good. I want to say I was like 13 when I read my first book that was written by a black woman who wrote a character who was black, and I appreciated it. I liked it. But as I'm looking back on it, that book was terrible. And it wasn't because of the storyline itself, because the storyline made sense for this character, but the character was ghetto and very over the top, obnoxious, and just kind of fit the same thing I would see in a book written by a white person. I didn't appreciate it, and I don't appreciate being termed as someone who is loud, ghetto, obnoxious, rude, violent, over-sexualized. Like, I know I'm sexy, but the importance of Own Voices is for me to not have to keep seeing one stereotype of myself over and over and over. There are different black people out there, and there are different white people out there, and there are different Hispanic people. There are different types of LGBT characters out there in the real world, and writing the same exact storyline when you're a white het cis person, no offense, is just very offensive. It's saying that we are the same person and we are not. That's why Own Voice is important to me. This kind of was a ramble, but I was trying to just make this sweet and short. Thank you!
Hello, I'm Mel and I'm from Argentina, which means that I'm a light-skinned Latina, and I'm also bisexual and also one of the creators of Own Voices October with Katie from Katie Loves to Read. As someone from a country that's still going through the colonization and with a sexuality that's not hugely represented or understood, I find an additional value in reading diverse stories from authors who actually live those experiences. It's known that marginalized authors have a much rougher path in the publishing industry because of a privilege issue. The goal of Own Voices is to put those authors in the center of attention. The truth is that for the longest time the stories were told by people in power, which means a lot of history and identity from marginalized voices were erased from history. So Own Voices is a way to reclaim that identity and that heritage, to show that not everyone's experiences are the same. It's the importance of seeing yourself in the story stories you read and feeling that there are people out there that's struggling with the same issues that you're struggling with, and that these characters are thriving and being happy in your culture, in your identity, in your sexuality. And with Own Voices, it's not only the characters' lives, but it's also the authors' lives. It shows marginalized voices that they do have a place to tell their stories in the book community, and that no matter what, you're going to have an accurate representation and a heartfelt story.
Hi guys, I'm Paige and I am biracial. My mom is from Barbados and my dad is from Canada. Being biracial, I've been told that I need to fit into a box. There are no biracial boxes. There is white, there's black, and there's other. I've been told that I'm not dark enough to be black, but I'm too tan to be white. So that leaves me in the ambiguous no man's land of the others. It's only been the past few years since I've gone to university and have met other people in similar situations who have had discussions with me that I felt that I am allowed to accept myself as POC, because I've been told I'm more white than black, so I can't label myself as POC. And I do understand that I have white passing privileges. I am educating myself more on that matter, but it was also very isolating to be told, oh, you don't really belong in either place, you're kind of on your own over there. I do think I would have been able to accept myself a lot sooner if I had seen myself represented when I was younger in the media, if I'd seen biracial characters in books or on television who were also going through similar struggles figuring out their identity as a biracial person, then I wouldn't have felt so alone in what I was feeling, because I'm definitely not. Own voice stories aren't only important because of the representation they provide, they let us become more empathetic human beings because we get to glimpse into the lives of people who are different from us and therefore understand their situation and see them as complex human beings. These stories need to be told from people who've actually lived that life, because imagination doesn't compare to experience. That's not me saying that people should not write outside of their own experience. I'm saying people should take great care when they do it. They should be prepared to listen to those who have lived the life they are writing about if they bring up something that could be problematic to others. Representation is important, but harmful representation can sometimes be even worse than no representation at all.
Hey guys, I'm Mav, and today I'm going to tell you a bit about why Own Voices books are important to me. I'm Mexican, I was born and raised in Mexico, but I was never really exposed to Mexican culture on TV or in books, because it was always very important for my mom that I was proficient enough in English, and I am very thankful for that because it allowed me to travel and it gave me a bit of an advantage in school, and overall it has been a really good thing. However, there is also the fact that because most of what I saw on TV or what I read was written or acted by white people, it put this idea in my head that being Latina meant that I had to be a certain way, which kind of troubled me a little bit because I obviously don't look like Salma Hayek or Sofia Vergara. But I didn't see anything wrong with the way Mexicans in particular were portrayed. I just saw it as a fact because obviously I was young and that was really all there was in books, and I liked reading more than anything. It wasn't until I got involved in the book Twitter community that I realized that there was something incredibly strange about books only showing one demographic getting a happily ever after or going on adventures, and there was something even stranger about people claiming that their book was diverse when in the end they only added, like, I don't know, one sassy spicy Latina who says random words in Spanish at the end of every sentence, and you only see her maybe once in the book and she's either yelling at someone or is somehow involved with the kids at the school that are doing drugs. That's why being able to find more Own Voices books and reading Own Voices books is so important to me, because a book written by someone who grew up in a Mexican family, for example, is always going to have that little bit of extra authenticity than another book may not have. And it also has a higher chance of staying away from writing stereotypes in an effort to maybe try to make the character more like what they think a minority should act like. I'm not saying that a white author can't write a book about a person of color or that a straight person can't write a book about a bisexual character, but if an author chooses to write outside their comfort zone, they should really do research and be sensitive about the topic and have empathy towards the demographic they are writing about. Because I feel like sometimes the biggest difference between Own Voices books and other books is that in the other books, the author might be writing just to fill a quota of diversity and ends up not writing us as humans, but writing us in a very cartoonish way.
Hey y'all, my name is Lila and I'm a book blogger at Inspired by Books and The Bookkeeper's Secrets. And today I'd like to speak about why I believe that Own Voices literature is so very important. Own Voices literature is, first of all, as someone who is part of many marginalized group, I'm a person of color, I'm poor, I'm disabled, I have chronic illness. I know that nobody is going to write about an experience that's similar to my experience as accurately as somebody who comes from the same marginalized group. They don't have to do research on it because they've lived it, and their stories are valid. Even if they don't agree with my story, their story is valid. However, when you have a writer who's not from the marginalized group that they're writing about, they have to do in-depth research and go through many sensitivity readers just to get a fraction close to the experience that I have experienced. And it's not that that's not okay, but there's a higher likelihood of them misinterpreting something or portraying something inaccurately or portraying something in a hurtful way, whether or not they intended to. And that's an issue for them and for me and for other authors. The second reason that I think own voices literature is so very important is because it tells people like me that our stories coming from our own voices are important, that they matter, that the truth matters. That is something that I think a lot of us aren't told very often. We're told that our stories are other, or they're not worthwhile or worthy, and that's just not true. So I think An Own Voices really says to people part of marginalized groups that their voices are important, that they're something that deserves to be heard. And the last reason that I think Own Voices stories are so very important is because that story, I have no words for it. It's something that comes from the heart, from a place of truth, from your soul, from experience. In that, I think it is the highest form of storytelling, something that comes truly from deep within you. And that is one of the most important things that an artist can do, because when you tell, I can say this as an artist myself, when you tell or portray a story that is so deeply true, you will truly connect with other people on a deep level. And when you do that, it shows to other people that we are all humans and we all have something in common. So that's why I think Own Voices stories are so really important, and why you should read them, and why I hope to read more of them this year, for the remaining of the year, and in 2017. So I hope you all have a good day and read diverse books. Thanks and bye!
The first time that I ever read a book with a bisexual main character was one of the most impactful and emotional experiences that I have ever had, because growing up I never saw anyone express attraction and sexuality the way that I felt it within myself, and it led me to live my life suppressing a very large part of myself and my identity. And that is why I think that Own Voices in literature is so important, because when you read so many books and never see yourself in them, you start to wonder if there's something wrong with you, if you're not normal, why there's no one else in books like you, and it can be very isolating. Own Voices is important because it helps us all feel a little bit less alone.
Hi guys, Blake the Book Eater here. Today me and Whitney are talking about Own Voices novels. I think it's very important. Diversity is a very strong issue in the book community, and as I was going through my bookshelf I realized that I have not a lot of books written by people of color, and that made me really sad because I am a person of color myself. It's a rare find when I find people that are of different races and different colors and different sexual orientations in novels, and to realize that most of the books that I own that deal with that kind of thing are written by white people, it was a little disconcerting. But I do have to say that I do have a lot of novels that do have lots of diverse representation in them. Some of these books behind me, well, I mean, I have a lot of books behind me, but the ones I have here, these are written by people of color. Angel Fall was written by an Asian woman named Susan E., and she's amazing. Fantastic book. David Levithan, he's white, but he's gay, and it's a fantastic book. Then More Happy Than Not is probably one of the most widely known in the booktube circles, I guess. Adam Silvera, he is a Latino author, and he's also gay, and this book is phenomenal. And then I have some other books that are not written by people of color, but they do have fantastic representation, some of the kind that you don't really see in other novels. My favorite books is actually a book called Storm Dancer by Jay Kristoff, because it's very, very rare to find Asians as main characters or even a part of the world. Now there's like a lot of black people in books, and it's fantastic, and some of my favorite books have like black main characters. But as an Asian person, it's sometimes really hard to find good representation, and Storm Dancer has fantastic representation. However, there are some issues with some like language, different types of language, and appropriating different aspects. But I don't speak Japanese myself, so I didn't really note some of that, but I did notice the problem when I read some reviews about it. But it's still a fantastic book, and if you don't know the Japanese language, I know that's skipping over a little bit, but it has fantastic representation, a great kind of Asian vibe, especially if you like anime. It's such a great book. And then we have one of my favorite books from this year, We Are the Ants, and it's written by a gay author named Sean David Hutchinson, and this book deals heavily with the issue of sexual orientation and gay people and Latinos, and it's fantastic. And then the other two I'll just mention very quickly. Sci-fi is become such a diverse place because it's so far in the future that race lines seem to be blurred, especially with sexual orientation, that kind of thing. And so these two books that I'm reading right now or have read, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers and Leviathan Wakes, they're both sci-fi, they're both super diverse, both super awesome. And thank you so much for Whitney for putting this awesome little video together, because it's very important that we find authors and we find books that represent the real world. There's lots of people of color out there, and we need to make sure that we support books that make that happen. Bye.
Hello everybody, my name is Sydney and I'm from Sidsaurus Rex, and I'm going to give a little bit of my insight and my personal feelings on why own voices diversity and diversity in general is really important. I am Latina, I'm Puerto Rican and El Salvadorian, and I'm also bisexual. I live in a house where being bi is not really supported. I'm not even out yet to my family, and I feel like this kind of situation where I'm in right now is really related to the need for more diversity. In essence, really, I feel like diversity in young adult literature helps build an identity for young adults, people who are growing and trying to find themselves. This is especially true for me, especially because I didn't even know that there was a word to the way I was feeling for most of my life. As a kid, I knew I was bi. Really, all around me, I just saw evidence that really, I felt like it was not normal. I did not see any characters in any of the TV shows that I liked, in any of the books that I read, and any of the video games I played even. All these relationships that were in them were all very heterosexual, and I was bisexual. Well, I am bisexual, and I always thought that everyone around me felt the same way I did. Like when you're a kid and you have little crushes. I had crushes on girls, and as well as I had crushes on boys, and I thought it was very normal until I kind of clicked in my head one day, and I realized that nobody else around me, or I thought nobody else around me, felt the same way. So really, it led to a big snowball effect of a lot of depression and anxiety over my identity. I thought that I was sick. It didn't really help that I was growing up in the church either. I thought that I was sick. I thought I was a monster because I was constantly told these things, either by my parents or by the church, but I was also never told by the surrounding media or by books in general that it's not that you're not normal, it's just that you work differently. I don't like to use the word normal. I don't think there is such thing as normal, but in my young, 7th grade head, I thought that I was abnormal. It really took me until my senior year of high school to really realize that, yeah, I'm bi, but I did not accept that. It took me up until I was 19 years old for me to really accept myself and love myself. All that anxiety and depression and self-doubt and self-hatred could have been alleviated if I had characters that I could look at and identify with, and that shared my experience as a bisexual. It really would have been so helpful for me to see a character that felt the same way I did about the people around me, with love interests and, relationships and things like that. It was so hard for me to accept myself. And again, it took me about 19 years to accept myself. I'm 21 years old now. It's really so new for me to be out, at least to my friends, but not even to my family. I feel like I cannot be open simply because they did not have that much diversity. They don't even understand homosexuality or bisexuality or being transgender or anything like that. They don't understand that. Really, if we have more of a diverse media in general, I feel like it really builds a bridge of understanding on both sides of any really spectrum, be it racial or sexuality or anything like that. Especially as a Latina as well. We kind of get the roles of, the cute sidekick best friend, or the lady from the bodega who, knows our coffee so well, or even, the nurse or a nanny or anything like that, which is to say really that for you to see yourself in those roles all the time, you feel like you're not as worthy to be the main character, as opposed to, the predominant main characters that are out there in young adult literature. Having, your voice out there in a book or a movie or a TV show, you feel as though you're finally valid. Like, I felt like I was finally valid, which is really sad to say that for a time in my life, I felt like I wasn't allowed to be a human being, that I wasn't allowed to, share the same love that everybody else was because I was different. I feel as though if I had characters that were going through the same way as I did, because that's really, as teenagers, that's really the only way we can identify, because we're trying to find ourselves in this world. Our media is basically our outlet, what we see on TV, what we read, especially what we read. When I kept reading, heterosexual relationship after heterosexual relationship after heterosexual relationship, it made me feel as though that my sexuality was not normal or as common, and B, as if any relationship that I sought after, if I were to lean towards, one side of the spectrum of being bi, I did not exist, or I was not, included in what we would call society. And I don't think that a lot of people understand that if you're not represented in a book or a TV show or anything really, they don't understand what it's like to be kind of left out. You become so desensitized to being left out that when you're included, you're just like, So that's basically, my take on it. I hope I made sense. Again, thank you to Whitney for making this video. I'm so honored to be a part of it, and I'm so honored for everyone else to hear my point of view. I hope you guys have a good night. Bye.
Hi guys, my name is Susie. Reading diversely is such a wonderful and magical experience, because not only does it remind us that we're not alone, but it also teaches us that the world is full of vastly different people, and that we can learn so much from reading their stories and hearing their voices. I have learned so much this year from reading diverse books and can't wait to keep going next year.